Um, Welcome to Friendship Matters, and let's dive in. I saw the note from you that you took, well, some notes, and of course, I'm now curious, what are some of the things that came up for you?
Well, I really had to take notes because I had to organize my thoughts because when you proposed this topic and you told me about this idea for the discussions, so many thoughts came to mind.
Hmm.
Uh, and friendship has actually been on my mind recently because of serious challenges I've been having with long-term friendships. One friendship of about 10 years, another friendship of 18 years. A couple of years ago, I lost a friendship that I had for 25 years, all this sort of thing. And so this has been front of my mind. What what goes on in a friendship? Of course, there's the positive aspects. What goes on in the friendship to cause it to break down?
Hmm.
And on the other side of that, what can I do when I see the signs coming to hold it together? And I've started to be able to do that with the last couple of when the fraying starts. I've been able to control my sort of emotions and control my responses and focus on let's get this back on track and
Hmm.
yeah and doing what needs to be done. So that's why it was front and center of my mind. So I just thought, I've written some notes, why do we have friendships? Why is it that people have friendship? I mean, of course, there's been studies on this, but these are my thoughts. Learning to navigate problems that emerge in friendships. I would have thought now that I'm 50 that I would have a good handle. And, I've had my share of ups and downs and experiences with friendships that I would be able to navigate this very easily. But it reminds me of something a friend of mine said 25 years ago, actually, many years ago, when I'd had a relationship breakup. And with that, we had a common circle of friends. And with that, the whole friendship circle broke down um, for various reasons. And I talked to an elder friend of mine at that time and said, "Look, does it get any easier? Does life get any easier? And he said, "I don't think so. It's a bit like an onion where, as you grow older, you peel back a layer." Okay, achievement unlocked sort of thing. You've got that. You know that. Then there's another layer, and then there's another, and there's always something to learn. And I think as we get older and our friends get older as well, new challenges appear.
Hmm.
So new challenges to friendship appear and the friendship takes on different contours.
And you mentioned, and that piqued my interest the most, but I'm happy to go in any direction, really. But what piqued my interest is the notion of seeing the signs coming, seeing the fraying coming. And I'd be curious if part of your notes, part of what you jotted down, is related to, well, what are the signs that you have seen coming and how did you respond?
Okay, what I think happens, the other person stops listening to you.
Hmm.
Something that you do seems to upset them. Right, I don't know what it is. Some sort of change. But they stop interacting with you as a person and start interacting with the model of you that's in their mind. And what I know, that's sort of what I noticed, and they start becoming short with you because they expect the model to behave in a particular way.
Hmm.
And so in each of these occasions when I've had faced this challenge, I've had to say to the other person, that's not what I'm saying.
Hmm.
I didn't say what you think I said. I didn't do what you think I said. I'm doing something completely different.
Hmm.
And that leads into that whole problem of, is the person just in their mind, or can you reach a person, get them out of their mind and engaging with you as a person? So
Hmm.
it's the old philosophical problem of how do you get people out of themselves and how do you keep that connection? So it seems that I'll just extrapolate here into a new area that I hadn't thought before, but it seems that the connection breaks between you and the friend and the connection only happens within their mind between them and their model of you. And of course, the model is not you. And so they're not really hearing what you're saying anymore. And so what I've tried to do each time this has happened is try to bring back the person and say, hi, I'm here, and this is what I'm saying, and this is what I'm doing, and this is what I want to achieve, and And the first time it didn't work. I couldn't do that because I was unskilled. I didn't have any skillful means, you could say. But the last two times I've worked really hard to try and keep that connection, or reopen that connection so that the person is actually engaging with me again.
And I'm now really curious if there were any specific, not phrases, because or even techniques, but like what did you place your attention on with the other person or with the relationship or on yourself, or like where you feel that has led to the success in the last two situations where something like that happened?
So in all three, I tried to say to the other person, I didn't say that. That's not what I meant, or that's not what I intended, or that's not what I said, or that's not what I did. That there's something going on here that's not, you're not paying attention. With the first one, I don't think I emphasized this enough. I sort of said it and then got a bit angry. Why isn't this person listening to me? When I should have known from all my studies and all my experience that, it's very hard to get a person to listen to you, so it's just a natural reaction that a person doesn't listen. With the last two, I have very strongly emphasized and held, made sure I held and kept repeating this. I didn't say that. I didn't intend that. This is what I was doing.
Hmm.
So I kept insisting that what they were engaging with was a hallucination, including in the case of the 18-year-old friendship. I very strongly said, look, this is all in your mind. And I know that this is a very provocative thing to say,
Hmm.
but I was willing to be provocative in that way.
Hmm.
Even in some way, it's insulting to say this to a person, but I had to say it, that look, you're hallucinating this. This is in your mind. I did not do this, and I would never do this to you.
Hmm.
Uh, and so with that one, not only did I say that, but I said, look, if we don't work this out, I'm going to walk away. So I had to put the threat on the table of walking away
Hmm.
from the friendship.
Hmm.
This for both this person and I to evaluate, what does this friendship mean to us.
Hmm.
Happily, in the end,
Yeah.
we came back. We're still recovering from it. We're still
Hmm.
having to, but we were able to hold on, that thread held. But I had to be very forceful in saying, no, this is it was a way of, I had to maintain my integrity. I had a problem of, I want to retain the friendship, but this person is asking me to do something that is inconsistent with my integrity.
Hmm.
Was to give in to this person would be to say, yes, I did something that you didn't like, and I apologize for that sort of thing. And I had to balance maintaining the friendship and maintaining my integrity within the friendship. And happily that thread held, and we were able to have both. But it meant being forceful. I mean, with the other instance, this person is a very different person to the first person. He's very much more intellectual, and he wanted to draw me into a battlefield, sort of an intellectual battlefield where he felt confident that he could win by
Hmm.
imposing a dichotomy on me. Either you do this or you admit that something else. And I refused to be drawn. I refused to be drawn. What I did was I stayed outside that field of conflict and just kept asking questions in the sense of, what is going on in my mind? Why am I doing this? Why am I acting in this way? Please think. And is
Hmm.
a way of trying to draw the person out of their mind and away from their model of me in their mind, and actually engaging with who I was and trying to work out what was going on in my mind as a way to bring them out of the hallucination.
Yeah.
So I found, actually, in those circumstances, I've had to be forceful but also gentle. It's sort of a gentle application of force, uh, maintaining your integrity in the conversation, in the relationship, but holding on to also, this is very important to me. You're important to me. I want to bring you with me, sort of thing.
Yeah. And really trying to paint now a picture of everything that you've shared so far. My what I'm getting is there can be situations where really if a person that you've interacted with as a friend, as a good friend for many, many years, at some point changes the way that they interact with you, that they see you, whereby you become almost like a two-dimensional cartoon caricature of something. And because they then have this experience, yeah, I know everything I need to know on topics that I care about now. I no longer need to listen. I can just like skip over that part.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that the way that you, especially with the last two cases, engaged with this was, at least from your experience, in part successful because you just kept reminding people. And there now, I would say, the way that I've listened or to understood what you were saying, by reminding them, I am an actual person, and whatever is going on for you with regards to how you see me is not me the way that I conceive of myself. And would it not be much better if you and I could interact on in a way that like we did maybe in the past, where I had the experience you're interacting with me and not just with this kind of projection or with this kind of cartoon version of me.
Yeah.
And by just and I heard you say forcefully, but also gently, a little bit like with in you are knowledgeable in Aikido, a little bit like with Aikido, I presume, where you also probably need some muscle, you need some strength, but at the same time where the aim is not to harm or hurt the other person, but really just to diffuse the energy coming at you in a way that then demonstrates to the other person, hey, I won't let myself be flipped over by you,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's not my intention to harm you either.
Yeah.
And one of the things that in what you said was most interesting for me is what are things or what are values, what are experiences that friendship can run up against. And especially it sounds to me for you, you mentioned integrity a number of times, that that would be something where you would feel if a friendship ever created a situation where you would have to compromise on your integrity, that would be almost like a bridge too far to cross.
Yeah. Look, can I respond first? So what you've just brought up is an essential, absolutely essential topic, and I'd like to discuss it. But first, I'm so glad you brought up Aikido because that this is something where I am in my Aikido journey is really at that point of after 17, 18 years, I discovered my own understanding of what Aikido is about, which is what they ask us to do anyway. And it's very close to my conception of what Zen is, which is don't intellectualize it, don't escape into your own head, get out of your head and experience the world as it is on its own terms. And with Aikido, what we try and do is we try and do the impossible. Okay, we're trying to move another person without using our strength.
Hmm.
And it's the same as in Zen, where the Zen they say, do not make a positive affirmation, do not make a negative affirmation, but tell me what this is. You
Mm-hmm.
know, many of the Zen masters challenge their monks, don't say this is this, don't say this is not this, but tell me what this is, And so the way that the monks seem to focus on and solve that problem is to do something physically with the object or whatever is being presented with them. And in Aikido, we're presented with the problem of defending ourselves and moving someone without moving strength. Essentially, as
Mm-hmm.
soon moving force, as soon as you're using force or strength and really straining, as soon as you're using these muscles to force a solution, you're not doing Aikido. That seems to be where I'm at, right? And so that seems to be the difference between it and Jiu-Jitsu and karate, etc. That Aikido is trying to take it to another level and say, okay, how do we solve this problem? And the solution seems to be first you have to get out of your head and connect to the other person and find out where the other person is, where this other person's intention is, where their energy
Hmm.
is, and then move with that and go with, you could say, the grain of the other person, just as a carpenter works with the grain of the wood. You go with the grain of the other person, and then you create a satisfactory solution in which everyone is safe, but you've led them to this solution. And so that's what I'm now seeking to apply in my friendships, is that sort of skillful means of finding where the other person's energy is. And rather than coming into direct conflict with it, instead engaging with it on its own terms and then leading it to a safe place.
Hmm.
And I suppose I told the friendship of 10 years, when we were resolving the problem we'd had just the other day, we had a long conversation. I said I could see it coming from 2 days before. I could feel the energy building up and I could tell
Hmm.
which direction it was coming and I knew it was going to come at me. And that gave me time to prepare. So you can feel the energy coming, and it's a matter of engaging with it, as I said, forcefully. You have to, there has to be some sort of force involved, but it has to be skillful and it has to be gentle and it has to have integrity. Otherwise, you're not you're not sort of engaging with a person as a person. They're just a training dummy to throw around, right? And the other person, you're dealing with a model in your mind. You throw the model in your mind around, and there's no friendship there. And that comes to the point about integrity. If in both cases I had just given in to the other person and said, yeah, you're right, uh, for me, that would have been the end of the friendship because I wouldn't have been there anymore because that wasn't my belief.
Hmm. Hmm.
I would have been losing myself in order to please the other person and hold on to the friendship. And I think that would have been fatal. It just would have been fatal for the friendship. And how could I have any self-respect? And then how could this other person have any respect for me? So to maintain the friendship, I had to risk everything. And I had to maintain my integrity and say, we have to find a third way. Not of me fighting you and just saying, no, this is not how it is, and not of me giving in to you and saying, yes, you're completely right, I'll fix up, but rather of me saying, here is my position, here is your position, that's okay. How can we then go on with this? Where can we take this to a third place, a new direction where we can still be together, even as we retain our integrity within ourselves?
And I'm now curious whether you would say the way that you approached those two last friendships that you were able to, yeah, keep alive, to really stay engaged, whether you would say that the approach that you took was a kind of Aikido or Zen approach already, or is that still something that you're looking to blend into how to navigate those situations with friends?
I believe it is, but I'm still working on it. So there's like a experimental approach to dealing with the world and dealing with other people because I really only discovered it. I really only discovered it in the last few months. I don't know if I told you, but when I was on my recent trip to Spain, I was reading a book by Suzuki about Zen, DT Suzuki's Introduction to Zen Buddhism. And suddenly it all became clear. The reason why the monks slapped their students and their koans made no sense and what they were trying to do by saying, don't tell me yes, don't tell me no, just affirm. It all made sense. I was sitting in a coffee shop in Madrid and it suddenly all made sense. And I don't know if this is a false enlightenment or a true enlightenment, but it makes sense for me. And I said, oh, okay, that's what Zen's about. And that's helped me with my Aikido as well. So what I'm noticing is now, this sounds very funny, and this is going to sound wrong, possibly to a lot of people because of where our culture is. But these days, I'm actually being asked to teach as a fill-in teacher at some Aikido classes, which I really absolutely love. I mean, I think I've told you I love teaching. I'm so pleased with I've got a teaching job now, and I love teaching. But the temptation is, and I have to fight this temptation, and I never knew I had this temptation before, is that when the student is doing something wrong where they're going into their mind and they forget that you're in front of them, the temptation actually is to slap them. And this isn't something I want to do. I want to explain that this isn't something I want to do, but it's a temptation inside me to say, hey, wake up. Because in Aikido, it's a martial art. If you aren't paying attention to your circumstances, you're in danger. And if someone can touch your face, that means they can punch your face or stab your face or slice your face open with a sword or something like that. Okay. So it's very important. A slap is actually a very gentle thing. And I've had to tell myself, no, no, this is not the way to teach. Okay. But the temptation is in there to say to the other person, hey, wake up, I'm here. Because I can see it when we're doing a technique, the other person will drift into their mind as they try and solve the problem. And what I think Zen is about and what I think the Aikido is about now is, hey, you must engage with the other person. You cannot slip into your mind and into your own ideas and models. You must be out there engaging with the world as it is and the other person as they are, and then extend through that and do the Aikido. And so I'm feeling that this is my experiment now. I'm experimenting with this with my Aikido each time I train, which people have noticed and they say, what the hell are you doing? I was saying, look, I'm finding the energy here. I'm trying to find the connection. And I'm experimenting with my friendships that if we stumble, if we come across a rock or a gulf starts opening between us, I will start looking for that energy and the intention and the direction and try and bring them out of their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's completely counterproductive to slap people in the face. I understand that the Buddhist monks live in a different time. We don't do that. But how do you, with skillful means and gently, bring them out of their minds through talking to them?
And there's something in there that I feel relatively alive about, in part because there's a situation going on in my life at work where, yeah, I suspect I will have to meet a challenge that will come at me and that has at least some of this quality of something being potentially projected onto me, or that is at least my experience. And then to see how do I deal with that. And the way that you described figuring out where the intention is, what the energy is about. I'm wondering, for instance, whether you found out with your friends what it was, either in you or something that you did say or something that you did do, that led to this switch in them that brought this energy online and led to the projection, and whether, other than saying what you are fighting with is not me, you're fighting with a, a model of me, or you know that's what you're doing. But were you able to at least figure out with those people what they were fighting?
Uh, with the first one where it broke down, the problem seemed to be that, as you may know, I've been really working on epistemology, and also that has taken me in the direction recently of open mind, going from, as I say, going from this to this, and that's caused a change in me and a change in the way that I approach other people and that I approach the world. I mean, this discussion about Zen and Aikido and friendship is all a part of this opening up, open mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have noticed in sense-making discussion, our recent discussions, I'm not sure, I don't know if it shows up much there, but with this old friend that I'd known from university, he mentioned when we were trying to talk about what was going on, he said, your mind is too open. Your mind is too open. And so part of the problem was he was reacting to his model of me in the way that, oh, Jeremy's talking crazy again. And it's part of an outcome of COVID where we differed during COVID, and I realized I had to dial it back because I was very interested with this open-minded approach. I was very interested in what are possible solutions that we're not looking at. And so I was open to any prospects, any information that were coming to me. Whereas he, I think he might have completed it now. He was doing a PhD, and he was very much in the scientific mode of, if it's not in a publication, then I don't have to believe it. Has it been tested? Has it passed a statistical significance test? All that sort of thing, right? Whereas I was just, look, let's have a look at the ideas. The science can come later, but what are these ideas that are emerging? Then we go to the science, etc. And so that was the fracture that happened
Mm-hmm.
during COVID. And then 2 years later, it turned into this thing of, you're too open-minded. And the problem was, he was just dismissing everything I said or misinterpreting everything I said because he thought it came from this crazy open-minded approach.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the fracture there, that I had changed in becoming open-minded, but I also saw that he had changed in becoming very scientific and science-based, and either there's an authority, a scientific authority behind something, or there's not. So he was asking me, in the end, when I'd share something with him and say, oh, this is interesting, or I don't like this, he'd say, where's the evidence for it? Where did you get this quotation from? It's like, okay. I'm not used to conversing like this with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
With the other two, there was a person. It's interesting. The second one, there was a personality clash with my friend of 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
That she wasn't happy with she didn't think my humor was appropriate, or my jokes were too hard for her or something. And it turned out in the end, something I didn't even think, I wasn't intending to be funny. I just gave a thought and told her how I felt about something, and she thought I was trying to make a joke, and she got very angry with me, furiously angry with me, like really furious. So it seems in that case there was something building up over time that upset her, but she couldn't feel that she could talk to me about until it got too much for her. But in the end, her upset at this had so dislocated her thoughts about me that anything could have been a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. And that took a lot of talking. And as I said, I had to go to the line, had to go right down to the wire to say, look, unless we sort this out in a way that allows us both to keep our integrity, there's not going to be a friendship. So that was something that was building up over time. Something about the way that I interacted with her, because I'm a person who enjoys life and likes to have a light-hearted approach to life. But it was a bit different from her for her. So yeah, but I had to say, we have to get back in. You have to get back in touch with me and listen to what I'm saying, because I'm not what you think I am in this instance.
Mm-hmm.
I had to listen to her as well. I had to listen to her concerns and be sensitive to her boundaries, which I hadn't been sensitive to before. That's where I'd had to change. So we're still working on that, but thank heavens we've saved the friendship. With a third person, um, he's very much another sort of scientific, rational person. And what was upsetting him was that I wasn't submitting to his scientific, rational model of the world, a scientific, rational view. He essentially he was saying, look, I've got this gleaming, shiny model of the world for solving all the problems of the world. Why don't you accept it? And I admire what he's done, but I've got my own understanding of the world as a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to try and make him see that, yes, I admire very much what you've done, but I've got my own thoughts. And so the technique I had to use there was the what am I thinking technique, because his thought was he was struggling with the mystery of, why doesn't this person submit to my model? Either tell me what's wrong with it, or submit to it. And I had to break out of that sort of binary, that dichotomy, and say, look, the solution is in my mind. It's what I'm thinking. So tell me, what am I thinking? And this was something he was completely not used to. He wasn't used to getting out of his mind and engaging with another mind on its own terms. So that was interesting. But thank heavens we we managed, after a long conversation, we managed to keep it going. So yeah. But there's sensitivities there that he said, okay, well maybe we can't speak about a couple of things now. That these topics are off limits because they just upset us too much. So I'll have to be sensitive to that as
Mm-hmm.
well. So there are things I've learned. I'm very glad this open engagement is working and I've managed to find it. Eventually, I'm hoping that because we have friends in common, that I'll be able to reconcile with my old university friend. I'm sure that'll happen when the time is right. Uh, but the learning thing is in me is okay. These people have these are these people's boundaries, and this is what they respect, and this is what they like and don't like, and I have to be sensitive to that,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where I wasn't sensitive before. But the main thing is that if we can maintain the friendship with integrity. So I suspect, I'm sorry, I forgot about your own circumstances. I'll drop my 2 cents, Jochen. I'll drop my 2 cents here. I think having been in a lot of work situations or a number of work situations where there'd been difficulty with colleagues, including colleagues with whom I got along very well previously, the main thing is maintain your integrity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you'll have no problem with that. Don't give in just because a person says you are X and X is a bad person. You agree with that. No, no, you hold your corner. But make sure you keep your cool as well. And if possible, I'd say get a third person in. Go and see a counselor or the HR person. Have someone in there to mediate because
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did too. I mean, I wasn't sure when I had these problems with colleagues, I wasn't sure what to do. I was stunned actually because up until that point in almost 20 years of work, I'd never had any problems. And then all of a sudden these problems started emerging. And I think it was about this other person's insecurity about their position. They didn't know how to handle people very well or something. And of course the floodgates opened and I didn't know how to handle it. And being an avoidant person who doesn't like conflict, I didn't, I stayed silent and let it happen. Whereas the proactive thing to do would have been to call HR or call a counselor and say, hey, can you solve this problem between us? But number one is maintain your integrity, which I don't think
Mm-hmm.
you'll have doing, but definitely try and distance yourself emotionally from the situation and solve it that way. Despite all the provocation that will come your way, actually, and this is something that I've learned also with my friendships is despite all the provocation that comes your way, being told you have too open a mind, being told that you use humor the wrong way, or you don't appreciate what I do for you, is looking through that and saying what's the real issue here. And so that's a bit of an Aikido thing as well, in that as one old black belt told me when we were doing a sword exercise, where someone would come to attack you and you'd parry the attack. He said, look, we're not just playing swords here, of course. No one uses swords anymore. The idea is to experience what it's like when someone really comes for you
Mm-hmm.
and get used to the feeling of, okay, this is happening again. I know what to do and step out of the way of the attack and lead it to somewhere that's safe. And so you don't take it personally. You don't take the blow personally. You absorb the attack or you move out of the way of the attack and you lead it to a productive place. So that's free advice, Jochen. I'm not the person to say this is perfect. So I'm very sorry, but I thought that might be a way, that might be something to think about because I know I've been in this situation. I know what it's
Uh-huh.
like. Yeah.
Um, the one thing I can share about my situation that I feel really comfortable sharing is that my experience has really changed between yesterday and today dramatically. And the change because yesterday I came home from work and to the extent that I was not mentally busy with something else, yeah, my mind was actively maybe trying to figure out what is the Aikido move here. I'm not entirely sure what the question exactly was that was going on for me. Um, But the change that came really, it was I woke up at around I think 4:35 in the morning, and I had a train of thoughts or experiences in relation to what I imagine is going on for the other person, not with regards to what they're thinking, but with regards to how something that I did in fact do created an on ramp to use me as a projection screen for a specific conflict that this person is having. And it is a conflict similar between, in a way, integrity and friendship,
Mm.
where I imagine this person is going through a conflict between care and autonomy. And the way that I approached the situation that led to this whole thing, right, in that initial triggering situation, my experience now is that I questioned this person's autonomy or this person's ability to choose wisely enough. And that created an experience of like, oh, something that I am already in my life very much juggling and struggling with. This person is now becoming almost the perfect symbolic stand in on the
Mm.
side where I would like to exert some,
Mm.
where I want to affirm my stance. So I
Mm.
really unwittingly stepped into a kind of sparring ring. And well, then the rest is history so far.
Mm.
And for me, at least, now that I have, because I was really struggling primarily with the question, and I don't know if you had this question for yourself. Did I actually do or say something that would warrant this response, right? And I think it is a legitimate question, and I never want to just say, no, I didn't. Because,
Yes.
well, in that regard, you and I are open-minded, I guess, and I will always consider, yeah, like, did I in fact do or say something that would warrant this precise response coming out of a
Mm.
person? And I had such a hard time, but like when I was like, it's it is about me and it is not about me. So it is
Yeah.
about me in regards to, yes, I did something or I said something that created the situation. I did do that. But what is not about me is already the pent up energy that is there, that by triggering it, it just flies out of the other person in this manner that is initially hard to comprehend as a, like a, what's the word? Commensurate to the
Yeah.
initial insult, let's say.
Yes. It's out of proportion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least from my perspective, arguably so.
Mm.
Again, even there, I wouldn't say that I have it correct, right? That is not my claim. My claim is more I now have a much less severe experience of I am being targeted. Like me, the person is being targeted. Because as you said, they're not targeting me, they're targeting a stand-in that they now have that they can use for
Yeah. Yeah.
focusing a certain kind of energy on and saying like that is where I want to apply force in my environment to assert a certain value that I have. And I imagine that that is going on for each of your friends in a certain way as well, right? Where something that you said violated one of their values, and they could then use you as a kind of, oh, I am standing up for this value by fighting with Jeremy in this manner.
Yep.
And by then understanding that it is not personally directed at you, right? It is not anything that you did personally wrong in a way, but really just like you are a kind of stand-in for a symbolic fight that, and that is for me the difficulty that has less to do with friendship, but more with how to generally integrate this. Because, yeah, the struggle to balance values is a real struggle. It's a very, very real struggle. And our culture at the moment, I think, is doing very bad job at supporting people with some decent enough education to even like point out each time when you have this experience that you want to maybe not slap someone, but like you want to fight, where you have this impulse of wanting to pursue something with force. Whenever that happens, the source of this experience lies within you. You have an experience that two things are in conflict, and on one side there's too much, it's too much in the negative, and you want to push for that side. And so you are pushing, but you're pushing outside of yourself before even understanding what the two things are that are in conflict with one another. And by then projecting this on the outside, you then become more or less impervious to any inquiry into what is going on for you because you have already decided, yeah, the other person needs a lesson or the other person needs this or the other thing.
Yep. I am righteous. I am right. This is wrong. I will solve it. And I will solve it through the other person, through, yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
And
look.
yeah, I certainly hope that as this progresses now, I will keep my cool primarily. And I very much liked, and I had already thought of this. In fact, just like 2, 3 hours ago, as I was thinking of, if someone from HR from my organization comes to me in the next week or two and wants to have a conversation with me, I would very likely say, and I would like to have another person in the room. They don't even have to be my friend or your friend or anyone's friend. I simply want there to be another body,
Yeah.
someone who is a witness as to the
Yeah.
exchange.
So important.
Because ultimately, I think that whenever, and I know this, already, if there's someone who I'm aware there's another consciousness in the room, I will respond very, very differently, especially in a conflict. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. My hunch is because I'm then not as single-mindedly, my consciousness cannot even single-mindedly focus on the other person as the attack surface because there is another person in the room, right? And if I did that, I do then become much more vulnerable myself again, right? Because if I were to, with all of my intent and all of my force, try to attack someone, but there's someone else in the room, that person could at any moment slap me, as you said, with the face, right? And so I will have to divide and divert sufficient of my attention onto this person, which makes it almost impossible to be quite as vociferous against the other person. And so for me, it's a logical thing to ask. Yeah, like I'm happy to have any conversation with anyone, and I would like to have just another person present, whoever that is.
Jochen, there's so much there that I want to respond to. So I've got 3 points. I'll have to bear 3 points in mind so I don't forget. The first one is just very basically think of the geometry of what you just described. If there's two people, you've got a straight line, and all the energy is running in a straight line. And it's almost necessarily confrontational because it goes directly from you to the other person, directly from the other person to you. Yeah. So you've got that situation, you've got 2 points in a straight line. Now add in a third person. If not a triangle, you have at least the makings of a circle. And all of a sudden, the energy is different. The energy may not have to go directly to the other person, it can be dissipated as it goes through a third person.
Hmm.
It can even be converted from confrontational energy into positive energy via that person. So that even just adding another point communication completely changes the energy dynamics of where you are. So from that particular energy thought, I think that's such a great idea. You know, a lot probably depends on who that person is, the quality of that person, their development, etc. But their neutrality, etc. But I think it's a great idea. I think this is relevant to friendships. This is my second point. I think it's very relevant to friendship because when you put yourself in a friendship, you put yourself in proximity to another person.
Hmm.
And that's the essence of it, because you want to enjoy the proximity of the other person. So I've got my notes here. Why do we have friendships? It's really we want to get in a situation where we can share things with other people, share their ideas, share our time, share our goods, whatever it is. But by putting yourself in proximity to another person, you put yourself at risk of becoming, as you say, the focal point for whatever negative energy is going on in their minds. And I thought recently a lot about shadow projection.
Hmm.
So, with my very old university friend, he was working on a PhD. He had suddenly discovered the power and the integrity and the cohesiveness of scientific reasoning. And so that was held up as a good thing, and anything not of that way was pushed into the shadow as being bad. And here I come into his life and say, "Hey, wow, have you heard about this solution? Crazy off the wall stuff, right? Which, isn't that crazy at all, I think. But, it's not scientific, doesn't have that scientific coherence yet. And all of a sudden, I'm just digging into that shadow area. And he's not happy about that. And it comes straight back at me as, you're too open-minded. Your mind is too open. With my friend, the model builder,
Hmm.
the logic model builder, he's saying to me, why can't you impugn the logic of my model?
Hmm.
Why can't you tell me what's wrong with my model? Either that or submit to it. So for him, the highest goal is the logic of it. And
Hmm.
I was not engaging with the logic. I was not saying, yes, the logic holds up, the reasoning holds up. I was just, yeah, that's interesting. I like it, you know. But I wasn't for him, if the logic is coherent, then it must be convincing. And here I'm over here saying, yeah, the logic is convincing, it's great, but I'm not adhering to it as he would want me to. So that provoked a shadow in that all the non-logical stuff, because I wasn't making sense, in the shadow part of his mind is all the non-logical stuff that we go. And here I am just provoking it. So I'm in proximity here out. So when you're in friendship with people who maybe haven't worked out their shadow side, you are always at risk of having that projected out on you. And that just happens when you're in proximity. It's at work or it's in friendship or something like that. And that seems to be what happened to you. This person hadn't worked out what was going on, as you said, between care and autonomy. And completely innocently, you did something or said something which triggered that in the other person. It's nothing to do with you, but out it comes because you're there as the proximate person. And the third thing, and you just have to develop skillful means to deal with that. And I think, even as I get older, people change and they get old, their shadow side change, their integration with their shadow side, their ego change, all that sort of all the psychological concepts. And they're all new things to be grappled with in friendship. The third point is something that I often talk about Doshin Roshi, right? I got a lot of good ideas out of Doshin Roshi, and he said it sounds like what you're doing, what's happening here is that a person has perceived themselves to be a victim of something. Whatever it is, they see I am being victimized. And essential for the idea to make it work, to make it coherent, the idea of victimization coherent, there has to be a victimizer. And so that label sort of is free floating in the atmosphere in the relationship and it has to be located on someone. And so you fit the role because you're proximate and you were there and you may have said something. Okay, here we have problem solved. We have our victimizer. And not only that, but when you have a victim-victimizer relationship, you have righteousness in going out against the victimizer. The savior can go out and be victimized, scapegoat everything on the victimizer and do it with righteousness, and so that in that sense of, I can't remember the name of the French. philosophy or thought of it. We salve ourselves, we heal ourselves by putting all of our sins onto the scapegoat. What Doshin Roshi says is there's a solution to that Karpman drama triangle of victimizer, and savior. And that is you introduce the witness. Now, I'm not exactly sure how this works because I haven't heard him talk about, but just by introducing a new person in, the witness, suddenly the energy transforms and that whole drama triangle stops. And we are able to live with one another without the victimization, without having to save people, without people being victims or victimizers. And we move on. We move on. So I think you've struck a very important point of just in engaging in a friendship, we necessarily put ourselves in harm's way. There's no benefit without risk. As the Japanese say, if you want a tiger's cub, you have to go into the tiger's lair, right? You have to put something at risk. And one of the risks is that you become the object of the other person's shadow projection or whatever it is. And so to maintain the friendship, you need to develop some sort of skillful means for absorbing these emotional excrescences, emotional outbursts, and holding integrity in yourself, in the friendship, in the other person, and then leading to a better point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think your approach sounds a great one to me, a really positive step.
I'm now curious what other notes you jotted down before the conversation, because somehow I imagine we're still at number one.
Number one, right? That's okay. Yeah, I thought so. Why do we have friendships? There seems to be a natural urge. We are gregarious, sociable creatures. Okay, regardless of what you think about our evolution or our design by God or whatever it is, we are designed in some way to be sociable creatures, to reach out of ourselves and make a connection with another person.
Mm-hmm.
And so friendship is really an essential part of humanity, of being human. And problems in friendships, of course, they arise because human nature being what it is. But even when we've had problems with friends, we still go out and seek friendships.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in us, we have to engage with other people. Another thing is that something that has happened recently is possibly related to my own developing openness, etc. I am very open to new friendships. So not unlike as you might think, when you get older, you get closed and set in your ways and closed in new friendships. I'm actually very open, and any conversation can lead to a new friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So I had just as an example, I've been going to a watch repair shop here in Sydney for about 15 years. And there's an old couple who run the shop. They're an old European couple. They escaped Europe after the Second World War. And, the wife does the front end stuff, dealing with customers, does the business, and the husband just, crunches out repairs to watches all day. Okay. And, I'd go in there and say, hello, Mrs. Sintik, how are you? And how's things? And, here's my watch and, it needs a new battery, blah, blah. Just small talk, but I really liked these people. I liked how homely it was. I liked the family business, etc. A couple of years ago, I went in to get a watch repaired, a new battery, and there was not a young man, a man my age at the counter talking to someone else about shares. Like some people are coming talking about the share market or something for some reason. Anyway, when they left, I got up and I said, "Oh, can I interest you in shares?" Very with a silly humor, just to follow up on the conversation just had. Turns out he was the son of the older couple, and he'd stopped his career a bit like I'd stopped my career to help his parents, and because he was a bit disillusioned in that. And we ended up having a long conversation. And 2 years later, we message each other occasionally, but I will go into work early or go into town early before I start work to have an hour and a half or so conversation with him over coffee once a week. And that was the start of a friendship. Just I'm open if there's a conversation there. I'm open. And also what I found, so leading on from that, was that it seems like the strongest friendships I've had start as meetings of minds. They start as intellectual friendships. And then they develop into, you talk more about the person's life and you become engaged in their life and you become very comfortable with that person. I have other friendships in my life, from my Aikido friends, people I went to school with, university with, people I was at the choir with, etc. But it seems that the real glue, the real um, steel bar that holds friendships together, I think, is an intellectual bond.
Hmm.
That for me anyway, that's where it starts. That we've got some sort of meeting of minds where we can talk about things and talk for hours, and then a friendship evolves out of that. So I sort of had the idea of friendships of the intellect and friendships of the heart, and they're both very important. But for me anyway, that friendship of the intellect is the one that really engages me and gets me really wanting to engage with another person.
Hmm.
It, when we've got that, the mind wants to talk to the other mind. The heart wants to engage with another person and hear what they have to say and share ideas and that sort of thing. That's where a friendship develops for me.
Yeah, it definitely is a very rich fishing ground now to explore, maybe. Um, my first intuitive comment response, or no, it's actually a question, because it occurred to me as I was, checking out the mental models of the friends that I have, because they're currently not here. What initially drew me to wanting to pursue a friendship? And I think with each and every one of them, there was at least also one element, and I'm curious whether this is going on for you, that I don't have a good name for it other than it's a pretty shallow word in the English language for me, which is the word admiration. But there is a certain
Mm.
element of feeling. It's so difficult to describe this in like genuine, heartfelt terms because it would always sound so woo, but it feels like a spiritual or intellectual upgrade of sorts, where
Mm.
the experience that I have, a very embodied experience, is by hanging out with this person. I will become a better person myself, and not just in the moment when I'm hanging out with them, but really also in perpetuity. This person is a suitable partner of sorts in an exchange that allows me to grow.
Mm.
And I can totally see that that can be a friendship of the mind by which I can then grow intellectually, but it can also be maybe not Mother Teresa. That's kind of like that's like a couple levels too high, but whatever the next level is. And my experience has been overall that to the extent that the two people in the relationship can offer one another something of value, of experience, and you get the relationship going. Once it is going, it is typically no longer about that because then there is some the it really transforms the basis upon which the motivation rests, I would say. But initially, what has been typically the case is that there was this experience of like, and it's so weird to say because the fuel of movement still comes out of my soul, comes out of my own energy, but it feels like the other person and a relationship with the other person is worth the effort, the opening, the engagement, because once we are in a relationship, then it becomes this perpetual motion machine where I no longer have to worry about any fuel and energy. It will just like nicely hum along.
Mm. Yep. What I hear in that or what resonates in me when you say that is the idea of I am to some extent incomplete. And I may not know that I'm incomplete. I mean, I have my own strengths, weaknesses, skills, virtues, vices, whatever it is. And there's another person with a different set of attributes. And somehow my heart knows, or my spirit knows, or my unconscious knows that this person has something that I am seeking even in myself, which I might not even be conscious of. And by associating with that person, I can develop in that way that I couldn't develop on my own. And it probably presents itself to you as admiration. You feel it as admiration because, wow, how does that person do that, man? How do they, how can they be that, right? I want to be more like that. And the magnetism, the attraction is very strong. So just as an example of that, I can give two examples. One is when I went to university, I'd been for the 8 preceding years, I'd been at all boys schools. So pretty much I'd socialize with boys, and there were the occasional school dances and, the sort of puppy love stage of girlfriends, etc. But, you're mostly living in a male world. And not only that, I was in a very traditional Catholic choir for all of my teen years. From the age of 10 to the age of 23, I was part of a male choir. You know, and I socialized with these guys. These were my friends. We had a huge range of older men, young kids, that sort of thing. Everyone got along well. But it was a very male socialization that I had as a young man. And then I get to university at age 18, and suddenly I'm in a lecture hall with young women. And I grew up with a sister, but we had different interests. So, and she's my sister, right? So what she did, she was either cool or uncool in certain areas, right? Anyway, I'm in a lecture hall with all these young women, and they fascinated me. Absolutely, I know it sounds strange, but imagine, you're a male socialized Catholic kid, 18 years old, and suddenly you're in this lecture hall with young women, and they're doing things with their hair, and they're chatting to each, and they've got their cups of water or coffee or something they're drinking, and we couldn't do that at school, right? We had to sit there, you wear your uniform and that sort of thing, pay attention. And I was like, what's going on with who are these creatures, right? It was a real thing for my mind. So for the first couple of years at uni, I just wasn't concentrating at all, right? But that meant the next step was, well, forming friendships with these women or with some women. And that was eye-opening, really eye-opening. They saw the world completely differently. So university is a great mixer because I was dealing with children from public schools, children from very wealthy families, young women, etc. But it was a real eye opener to see how these people lived and viewed the world, etc. And it was very fulfilling for me because that was a very strong stage of personal growth for me. These people had all these attributes or all these behaviors that I didn't know about and wanted to know more about, and so I got to know them, became friends with them, that sort of thing. So that was very useful for my growth. The next thing is in the martial arts, you see this especially, you will usually see a teacher or an older student who has all the skills, right? And just they're so elegant on the mat, right? They're able to throw people effortlessly, and it's all, and you're there stumbling around and you can't do anything and you're getting chucked around. And so the skill gap between you at one end and them with their elegance is up the other end. And that can lead to really strong feelings of bonding, but also, as you say, admiration in that I want to be like that person. I want to develop like that person. And so you train and train and train to try and get to that level. You try and fill out all those parts of you that you either do not have or that are very rough and you want to smooth them out. So friendship from that perspective, friendship is very important for helping a person to round themselves out because they see in another person aspects of themselves that they don't have but want to have and admire in the other person. And by associating with that other person, yeah, that's where the honey is, yeah, that's where the nectar is,
Hmm.
and you found yourself out. It's a
Yeah.
huge benefit of friendship. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious if in the notes that you took about reasons for friendship, so one was that you said the exp which sounds to me very exploratory and opening, but then also clearly closeness and Yeah, just for me, the word that comes up is camaraderie.
Yeah.
And this hasn't really as much come up with like the women that I've spoken with. And it is a curiosity of mine whether there is a genuine difference. I can at least imagine that there is one, in that I somehow imagine, given where our species comes from, that male friendships in particular have this kind of like, I have your back and you have my back, this kind of wingman like quality. And this can happen in any domain, right? You can be bowling friends, or you can be shooting range friends, or you can be academic friends, or whatever. And where if you go out into a situation in that domain in which you're friends, or where your friendship might be anchored, there is an expectation that the other person, well, won't fall into your back, but rather have your back, right?
Mm, mm. Yeah.
Whereas at least I have heard from some of my female friends that between women, sometimes it can also be more the experience of, yeah, and that's the thing. I don't want to indict anyone or even the group, the group of women, but that it is just a different quality, let's say. And one of the things that, at least for me in friendships, then is important, next to the exploration itself, is this. I'm not sure if I would say a shared risk, but a kind of experience of a that that the carrying capacity of two people together is greater than the sum of their parts somehow, and that kind of experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, I certainly have noticed with some friendships, I guess more than with others, where approaching a situation together really has this quality of, it's not that it is less effort, but it certainly feels less scary, for instance.
Yeah.
Just because the challenge, it's almost like if you go out with three guys hunting a buffalo,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't mean that it's just like three times or like only a third of the risk, but it's much, much less risky, right?
Mm.
Than if you go out alone. And so I think that ultimate quality of like friendship is still in my embodied experience, probably when I just go out with friends. There's a certain element of ease that really comes out of that experience of friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I can't speak for women at all. I really don't know. But for men, you see it in the culture, especially for young men, you see it in the culture, you see it in films, in the literature, very much that idea of a shared experience, shared tribulation, shared victory, shared triumph over adversity sort of thing. Very important for young men in their late teens to early 20s. It's, think of the Lord of the Rings saga, right? The friends
Mm-hmm.
go out.
Yeah.
They do all these things together, they face hardships, etc. Very important. Um, And certainly, so thinking about one of the dojos that I practiced in about 12 years ago, there was a very strong feeling of camaraderie that we had a teacher we all admired. We were all absolutely gung-ho to learn more. And we just trained really hard. And then afterwards, we all socialized. So we would train very hard for 2 hours or so, and then we'd all socialize around a beer and some cold meats and swapping stories, right? Swapping stories. And those sort of things were very important for the shared experience, and then sharing stories and laughing about things that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting reflecting on what you were saying, thinking that when men get older, it takes on a bit of a different quality. So I think for a lot of married men, they lose a lot of their male friendships as they sort of move into a marriage and look after kids, and they pretty much 99% of people sacrifice their lives for other people as they get older, right? They give up all their dreams and they say, look, I'm just living for other people, which is okay. That's just how it is. And a lot of men, as part of that sacrifice, is they seem to give up a lot of their friendships, and their primary relationship is with their wife, and with their children, but mainly with their wife, and so they don't really have that many friends. That's what I heard. Um, and so you start, maybe the focus seems to be more on using Maslow's pyramid of needs, the esteem needs, feeling good about yourself, achieving your potential. And so it moves away from a sort of Lord of the Rings model where you're out there meeting tribulations with friends as a band, to more of an old man in the sea thing where you're out there alone on the sea, battling the elements and trying to prove something to yourself above all compared to other people, as you get older. Now I'm a bit different because I'm single and have never been married. But looking back, a lot of my friends are either single themselves, never been married, or divorced men, or separated men. Of course I've got some married friends, but they're from school and university times, really. Um, there's other married men, but mostly most of my friends are other men who are on their own in some way, don't have that, how can you say, the sharing of a life with another half. And so maybe we get together because we don't have that in our lives. We don't have that
Mhm.
in our lives. Whereas married men, they've already, like, marriage may have solved that problem for them. They've got a best friend, their best friend and their wife and their lover and their emotional support. All those sort of things are in one person in the house, and therefore they don't really need friendship so much. And then it just goes on to that old man in the sea model where how do I do my best? How do I meet my potential? How do I meet challenges on my own? Sort of like a round the world yacht journey, right? Solo round the world yacht journey for the rest of your life. But definitely, some of the happiest memories I have from my childhood at school or from university times or even training and my times in the choir is where, you're part of a group, you've got a common cause, and silly things happen that you can laugh at and look back in with laughter, etc. They're very happy memories of having bonded with these people, and you get the feeling that we're not so much in our lives each other's lives at the moment, but if we were to meet each other, you could pick up the conversation straight away.
Mm.
Yeah, but I suppose in that is the quality of friendship changes as you get older. The need, maybe as you round out your character more because you've met all these other people, you've rounded out your character. There's less need of friendship to do that rounding, and so the demand for experience maybe. I'm not sure. For
Yeah,
me,
and
I still need these friendships, but that's because I don't have a person in the house that I come home to talk to. So I am
um,
speculating here. This is all speculation.
all good with the speculation, Jeremy, because as I'm extending my thoughts as far out as I feel I can still, not safely, but like comfortably step. Yeah, I already feel I'm in the deep snow. I've left the piste and I'm kind of definitely I'm not yet off the cliff, but I'm I'm already in deep snow here. Um, one of the experiences that I certainly have is about my life that even in the last 12, maybe 15 months, some aspects of my life, of my certainly my inner life, not my job, not my marriage, but my inner life, some aspects have been turned inside out or like upside down or something. Through one particular, like really, like where the axis came through one particular friendship. And my hope is that there will be more transformations coming, in part because so far, looking back into my own autobiography, life has only ever gotten better. experientially. Yes, I now have some back pain on occasion, and I have some other physical ailments, like when I about 3 months ago, after waking up from a nightmare, jumped out of bed and scraped off a good chunk of the skin on my knee, and there is still a scar on my knee that looks somewhat gruesome. And I just had my annual checkup with the dermatologist, and it was an interesting experience all by itself. So my
Mm.
my body is beginning to show signs of aging, in short, but my experience of it could not be any better. And I certainly am hopeful that the trajectory is not yet at its peak in a certain way, but that there's still good things to come. And, one reason for me to have these conversations about friendship is to really still learn where are there these kind of like edges that might do with a little bit of rounding, or,
Mm.
that kind of thing. The other image that you used, the old man and the sea, where at least I'm now curious if this is then going in the direction in more social settings, at least of like a shaman or something, where like someone who is set a little apart from the group because he has this very special role, or like a priest, right, who, at least in like the Catholic Church, doesn't have a supposedly family and kids and whatever, but just becomes available almost as this kind of, not friend, but like person to approach with life challenges for a consult.
Yeah.
And I can at least see that some of the people who I have been very fortunate to work alongside with or work under in my professional development, who turned out mentors in a certain way. Looking back, I can actually see that they were not, no, they were not lonely. Absolutely not. But they also didn't hang out in these kind of like same social circles or whatever. But they were more, yeah, like approachable as mentors. And part of maybe the deal is that you're most active going out in friend groups on the hunt. Those days are over,
Sadly.
and you are then in your little tent or apartment or studio or wherever you are, or office, and you can be approached with whatever it is that people want to approach you with.
Yeah.
And right now, this moment, I wouldn't want to have this life, but I can see the appeal. I can
Mm.
really genuinely see an appeal of that, where, yeah, it creates a very different dynamic. And
Yeah.
I'm always up for like learning a new dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to something my friend, so this is an old choir friend. He's quite a bit older than me. He's in his 80s now. But he said this to me 25 years ago, the onion analogy, that it never ends. You are always, there's no point, I think, at which you can say you've got it figured out. And I think if you say at some point, I've got this figured out, you're going to get hit by a tidal wave. And then, oh, okay, I got to do it again. I got to do it. And I'm still, so you're always learning. There's always something to learn, definitely. Um, it's interesting what you said, the point about the shaman or the priest. Like we almost don't have that role in our society anymore. But what it does, but we still have the need for mentoring. And I suppose what it means is, instead of approaching the relationship as one between the shaman of the tribe and the tribe member, where there's a hierarchical approach, you can approach the mentor as a friend.
Hmm.
So this man, still meet him for coffee every week. So we've been friends for 30 years now. We still meet for a coffee each week. And he was my mentor for a while.
Hmm.
And then I had no more need for a mentor. And there was nothing more he could teach me. I'd sort of learned those lessons. So that absorption, that rounding of those parts that he could help with had helped. And it transformed into a friendship.
Hmm.
So that's an opportunity, I think. I mean, it might be very hard to find a friendship with a shaman in a tribe, but because we don't have that role, if you find the right person, you can transform that mentorship into a friendship, which I'm happy to say I've managed to do. What was my other thing? I, oh yes, so at 50, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I changed career and went into teaching and why I'm writing all these books is because I just feel I have so much to give. Now, I don't know the quality of what I want, what I have to give, right? There's questions about that. But I just want to give back all of what I've learned and put
Hmm.
together, realized. And so that's one reason why I love doing sense-making discussion with people, because this is an opportunity, this is a place for people to come together and just talk and share, including for me to share my things. But for 6 hours a week, 9 hours a week, 12 hours a week, depending on what's going on in the term, I get to impose myself on a captive audience of students. And rather than just teach the dry bones of what's on the slides, I give them my anecdotes, I give them all my wisdom. And I say to them, look, write to me, write to me. So one of my ruses to try and get them to talk to me, because many of them still have a sort of school student teacher relationship. And I'm trying to say, no, look, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a professor. I'm here to really help you with your economics or finance, whatever it is I'm teaching you. I said, look, when you've got a question, don't go to ChatGPT. Go to ChatJeremy. And ChatJeremy will be a bit slower in providing an answer, but ChatJeremy will get back to you with an answer. So I'm doing everything I can to make it easy for them to talk to me. And it's starting to bear fruit. I think it's starting to bear fruit. One of the reasons why I was so busy these last 4 weeks is because before all these assessments were due, I was having the students come to me with questions.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that need is in me to sort of be that mentor or teacher, but I love that teaching and I just want to give back so much. All of when I think about where I want to be and what I want to do with my life, it's all in a role of facilitating learning. I have no dreams of driving a yacht or being the most popular person, driving a gold Lexus or BMW, having a big house, all that sort of thing. All my sort of dreams about what I want to do are all about mentoring and helping people to find the way. That is really where it's at for me. And if friendships evolve from that or friendships are a way to that, then that'll be wonderful. You know? Um, yeah, but it's bursting out of me
Hmm.
the the desire or the wanting to give to other people, and I'm sort of in the mood of or in the position of ask and it will be given to you, knock on the door and the door will be open to you, sort of thing. So yeah, but just coming back to the point, I mean, I'm sorry I talk digression, but yeah, the opportunity now is there because we've lost a lot of our old structures, those tribal structures. It's possible to have a mentor relationship with a friend or a friendship relationship with a mentor. And I think that makes it a lot richer engagement for a person.
Now sensing in how there is an aliveness there because I have some friendships where there is a considerable age gap, where my friend is quite a bit younger than I am. There's also a few where the friend is considerably older, and I do consider the friendships that I have where the person is older really as like me being the mentee and the person being the mentor, because I really sense that with 20, 25 years additional life experience, and especially given that those experiences are not just like same period, but more or compressed, but like there is experiences from a time where I wasn't even around or conscious.
Yes.
And that there are, it's not so much about the lessons. Maybe it's about an embodied an embodied attitude. Like what stance is it possible to take given a certain situation? Which I guess is a lesson, but it's not a mechanistic, scientific if this then the other thing lesson. But really much more a lesson of like how to be a tree or how to be you know, a bridge or how to be a boulder or like whatever, right? It's not an argument of sorts,
Yeah.
but really just an embodied lesson of like, here's how you can be in the world.
Yes.
And similarly, I noticed that in the relationships where the person is somewhat younger, whether I imagine that or not, yes, I perceive or I experience that the other person may also have that experience to some extent with me. And there is a genuine joy and hmm, yeah, like a sweetness to the experience. And maybe part of that is, well, with certainly with every passing year, it now seems less and less likely that I would ever have children of my own of in in the way that I would have children around to take care of their maturation and flourishing. And so this might simply be a little bit of a sublimation of that natural tendency of, I assume, most humans to want to pass on some of their learnings for life that is yet to come. Um, and that is genuine fun. And now I'm coming to the question, which is, are there specific boundaries that you have come to see as useful, that you think are useful, that you are still sensing into when it comes to trying to suss out where is the boundary between mentor mentee relationship type and friendship, and how permeable, not the labels, but like the positioning, really the embodied positioning of the other person in a kind of mental space or in a heart space even is. Because I suspect that there are definitely things that I would absolutely maybe even want to do with a good friend, but where as a mentor I would just say, like it's even if someone approached me who is in this position where they're younger and I perceive myself to be their mentor, let's say, and they were to say, "Hey, do you want to do this together?" Where I might simply say, "Yeah," it's like it's flattering. It's flattering for you to think of me as still cool enough, or like whatever the terminology would be, but as like, as the material of person to do this with you, and yet this might be best be done with a friend with whom you would go out on a hunt to
Mm,
to create
yeah.
stories
Yep.
together so that you have that you can lick your wounds together in the end and you get the same scars and you have right, because that's maybe not something you want to have with a mentor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, honestly, because I'm still very much exploring this, right? So this is not something, because no one gave me mentorship 101, read the manual, here's like 240 pages, and if you get through them, then you will be the mentor. That did not happen.
Yep.
Like I'm learning this as I go, but I suspect that there are natural laws of mentorship that if you figure them out and you abide by them, you will be a better mentor and your mentorship experience will also be a better one.
Okay, so I have to, I want to say, first of all, I got limited experience with this and only as a mentee because I've never mentored anyone. So my interactions with younger people are really through the university college that I'm teaching at, and there's the student-teacher relationship. So pretty much there's nothing happening there, friendship or mentorship or anything like that. There's hints sometimes, but there's really not much going on there. We really don't have that many young people at the dojo, unfortunately. Uh, we have to do some work on outreach at our dojo, I think, our art, but we haven't done that, so we don't have many younger people at the dojo. And I've got my nephews who I am aching to help them with their schoolwork, and they're not interested. So in terms of mentorship, at family gatherings and whenever I see them, I try and model the behavior that you want them to become. Okay, so show them the shape of the person you want them to sort of become into, right? Respectful young gentlemen. That's pretty much the best you can do. The rest is up to them as they form their personalities, discover their personalities, etc. So Jochen, I'm sorry I can't really help you with the mentor. I don't know, and I haven't had I don't even know how I would even enter into that relationship with a young person because I'm not getting them knocking at the door. However, from my experience, I almost knew innately what a person could be invited to, what a mentor could be invited to, or where I would meet a mentor and where would be inappropriate. Sort of almost, it was almost innately knowing that, to meet my mentor, we'd meet at a cafe or meet at a restaurant or go to a concert together or something like that. But he wouldn't come down the pub with my mates with me, or he wouldn't come out to a nightclub with me, on a Saturday night or something like that. I almost knew that the relationship was of a certain type, but it wasn't of another type. And so I never had a problem with the boundaries blurring because the boundaries never blurred. So I don't know. It's just something I knew innately. This is where I have a conversation with Tony, and Tony probably wouldn't feel comfortable in this situation. So that's quite all right. But I'm really interested and I'm very pleased to hear that you're in that position now where you're being seen as a respected elder by some young people, and they're thinking, yeah, this is something I want to ask this person, so I can learn from this person. So just the last point I'll make is many years ago, the director of music at the choir that I was at said it's a very natural thing for, as he's a young man to, how could you say, attach himself in some way to an older man as a mentor and get that socialization in how to be as a man in the world. As you move from boyhood and adolescence through to manhood, to find a model of an older man in an older man for working out how to become the man that you are. So that was very natural. So seeing it, hearing you talk about that and your concern about, well, how do I be a mentor? I think I can reassure you that this is a very old practice, and it's probably, the knowledge is probably innate in you. And I just say, well, one of the points that I had for where I am now is that I really respond to things in the way of thinking that I'm now dealing with life as though I'm surfing on it.
Mm.
And that means that in order to stay on top of the board and get where I want to go, I have to be responsive and attuned to the circumstances, the waves under me, the wind, the wave turning at my back, how fast I'm going, the direction I want to go, that sort of thing. I
Mm.
have to be attuned to the circumstances around me and then adapt to them. If I stay rigid with a belief of, no, this is how it should be, this is what it's going to be, I'm going to fall off. I'm going to get tumbled in the water. And that's how I'm approaching my friendship. I think the Aikido and the Zen have really helped me with that, come to that understanding. I don't know if it's right, but that's where I am. But I suspect that if you approach these opportunities for mentorship with the idea that I just have to keep feeling my way, and when something doesn't feel right, I edge off from it, and something does feel right, I go towards it. Trust your instincts on that. I think your instincts are very well honed. Having known you for a few years now, I think your instincts are very well honed for what's the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. And I think you'll be fine. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to say, I'm in a situation where there is no rule book. And so I'm just going to feel my way along and trust in my instincts and my feelings, and let it develop from there. That may be an opportunity for you. And I honestly think not much can go wrong.
Mhm.
So this may be an opportunity for you to step on that surfboard and see how you go. You know,
Yeah.
you may fall off a few times, but it doesn't matter. You fall off in the water, you get back again, and you learn. So yeah. I mean, this may be completely wrong, but that's the best I can do. I think that's how I'm seeing it at the moment.
And in what you shared, there are at least a couple of very important reminders, things that really kind of I have discovered at some point in my past where what you said stimulated or brought them up in my memory, where I agree that they're highly relevant and they're also relevant to friendship. And one is really this, it's a bit of a paradox because there are not exactly rules, there are principles. I think there are principles of friendship, but there are no rules. Certainly
Mm,
not like rules that you could write down, and once you've written them down, you've figured them out, and then you can just like that's how I engage with friends from now on, according to these rules. And another is this experience of falling off the surfboard, and which is also a bit paradoxical, I guess. The more that I'm willing to fall off the surfboard, the less I will fall off. It's just the more I'm willing to incur this potential of being thrown off. And
mm,
maybe same with Aikido, I imagine at least. The less afraid I am of the force that's coming at me, the less likely it is to get harmed by it.
yeah, yeah.
And so, really, not to have this experience of having to hide from something or not wanting to prevent something or being willing to roll with the punches, if you will, is what
Mm,
prevents major injury
yeah,
ultimately, which really goes against, and this is maybe also where when you said friendships of the heart and of the mind, where I at least feel to have always sufficient heart in the experience of friendship, because my overall experience of mind as a quality of my experience is that it is relatively more in the business of finding repeatable solutions to problems that could be turned into rules.
mm,
Whereas the heart is willing to follow present experience to where it goes, where every situation is unique, is fresh, is new. And it is the difference also that you pointed out at the very beginning with the friendships that went into the snag, right? Where the people treat you as though they already know what the solution is or how the problem goes, rather than
absolutely.
looking at you as a three-dimensional live person that every moment can still surprise you. And how important that is.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
is there anything else on the list of your notes where you feel like let's put let's explore this still for you today?
I just want to follow up on that point. I think what we have is that, as you said, the two-dimensional representation is necessarily a thing of the mind. And if that's where we start engaging with people as with our conception of them and forget that heart connection, so if the heart connection falls away and all we're doing is dealing with a mind representation, problems will occur. Whereas if you can maintain that heart connection with the other person, that goes a long way to solving a problem, because it's almost as though if you maintain a heart connection, you almost can't help but see the other person as they are in all their
Hmm.
dimensions. Once that connection stops and you think, oh, I know the person, yeah, and actually they're upsetting me, but they're causing me a heartburn, and you move it to the mind, then of course the model of you that they have in their mind and you as the person diverge. They have to diverge, and that causes tensions and problems. So yeah, the problem becomes how to maintain that heart connection with other people. And I suppose a very skillful means might be, how do I do what I can to make sure that the other person maintains their heart connection with me? Like, how do I maintain that heart connection? And so I don't mean it to be, I mean, I'm way out of my skis here, I don't mean it to be manipulative. You manipulate the person into it, but how can I keep that heart connection open with another person? Or if it's severed, how can I get it back? Because this is another big thing of my journey is learning. I used to think it was all about the mind. This is a very Western thing. I think that problems occur in the mind, and the solutions, well, we've got our minds, we can find solutions. As you said, we look at the patterns, we find rules. But a huge part of my learning in the last 10 years is, no, the heart is, if not equally important with the mind, then maybe more important. What is going on in the heart and the connections of the heart towards other people, towards society, towards oneself, is absolutely crucial for maintaining connection and, well, living a good life in harmony with other people. Yeah. It's this the mind is important, but it's not sufficient. Yeah. I think with regard to my other notes, I think that's it. I'm learning to navigate my way. I'm learning to be more sensitive with other people. The analogy of surfing is a very important one for me, in being sensitive to the conditions around me and developing skillful means for maintaining friendships in face of challenges. That's really where I am now. I found I have no trouble opening friendships with people, especially people I connect with intellectually. Maintaining friendships is really a measure of maintaining time, making time for the friendships. Is very important to send messages to people, have conversations, catch up with them. That's a challenge in itself. But when challenges appear, and they're appearing in my dearest friendships, that's when I have to really make the effort and discover the skillful means. That's where I am now. That's the biggest challenge for me now. But underlying that is the idea that these friendships are very valuable to me and I want to maintain them. I want to keep them because I get so much more out of them than if I were just on my own. I'm one of these people who needs friendship. So it's very important to me.
My overall hunch is that in situations where what is coming from the other side suggests to me a lopsidedness towards mind, let's put it that way, that one of the major reasons this is happening is that people everywhere have at some point been instructed in some manner to distrust or disregard the direct signals that come from the heart. And of course, the heart will still send the signals, but they will then be transfigured through the mind into these kinds of projections. Because whatever is going on for the person, whether they're afraid or angry, resentful, whatever the passion is that is being stirred, to the extent that it is filtered through this layer of mind, it then becomes sometimes very difficult to discern what is actually the underlying heart energy. And with regards to the question, okay, so how can I, not in a manipulative manner, but like, what would be the conditions that I could attempt to bring about that might at least make it more likely for the other person to consider sharing more of the heart than through the mind. And while obviously I cannot, like, this is really purely speculative, but it occurs to me that anything that more or less just ridicule is probably like too much of a negatively valenced word, but like that pokes a little bit of fun, good-natured fun at the mind and be like, so you mind have this experience, you are so much more far-seeing than the heart, because the mind can reach to the edge of the universe, right? The mind can say, how far is the sun? 8 minutes by the speed of light, right? Your mind can just reach everywhere, and so it may have this experience of itself that it is this fabulous capacity. So, mind, that is your self experience. But tell me this, and then something that makes the mind a little bit, and which I find interesting, that a friend in a different conversation a few months ago pointed this out, which makes sense, that humble and humility and humiliation all share the same root, which really means you come down from your throne or pedestal and engage like a normal human being again.
Mm.
And so to find a way of humiliating, humbling the mind a little bit, not in a kind of like nasty or, you know, with an intention to eviscerate the mind, but at least to point out, you know, you're not that great.
Yeah. To allow it.
And for me, actually, the Zen monk slapping another monk while being in meditation, especially this kind of very focused meditation, that for me is almost the function of the slap, is to just say, no matter how much you think your mind can control your experience, all I need to do is slap you a little bit and whoop, you're completely out of it.
And that's my understanding of why they do it. Get out of your mind. You're crazy. Because the mind has this failing where it's because it sees everything that it sees, it thinks there's nothing more than what it sees. And it has to be shocked out of that, I think. It has to be shocked out of that. Somehow you have to shock it out of itself and say, hey, the rest of us are here as well. Beyond we're living out beyond. So just as an anecdote on that, talking to my friend of 10 years the other day when we were having our knocking down, drag him out sort of argument about what was going on, and he was very angry that I wasn't submitting to his model. I was trying to engage him at that heart level, or trying to get him out of his mind. And I was asking him, what's going on? You're trying to provoke. And he was answering from within mind. Okay. And I didn't think about this at the time, but I think I did what you suggested, the humiliation thing, where he said, look, the reason why you don't want to engage is because your ego is in charge, you're ego-centered and all that sort of thing. And so I without really thinking about it, I said, yeah, but that's trivial. That's a trivial point because everyone is ego-centered. We're all controlled by your ego, blah, blah, blah. And that's in your model, right? But what's actually specifically going on here? And I think he thought he had all the answers because that's what his model said. That's what his mind said. We're all ego controlled and you're living in the ego, that sort of thing. But once I was able to dismiss it as saying, yeah, but that's trivially true. What's the essence of the truth here? There has to be something deeper. Go to that deepness, go to that depth. That's when the real conversation started
Hmm.
because he couldn't rely on that model anymore because very gently, I didn't realize I'd be doing it, but very gently I said, that's a trivial understanding. I want the deeper understanding of what's going on. And that was enough to shock him into a conversation where it could actually be productive. And we were no longer in win-lose, where he wanted to have the conversation. We were now in deepening understanding conversation. And so I think your trick of humiliating the mind and getting it to sit down in the corner while the adults have the conversation, I think that's a really good way of talking about it. And I hadn't thought about it, but that's a breakthrough for me to hear you say it. Yeah. Put the mind to one side for a minute with all its answers and its patterns and its comprehensive solutions, and let's have a heart-to-heart talk. Yeah. But somehow, yeah, you have to use skillful means to try and quiet the mind and let the heart speak. Yeah. And I think that's all part of the journey of learning, learning about this, right? Learning how to have these conversations, productive conversations with people. And it sounds like from what you're going through at work that you'll be having an opportunity for one of these very soon, Jochen. So I'd say just embrace it. Just embrace it.
Yeah. And for me, one of the things in which, like, uh, that I found more and more helpful to not get caught up in my own mind is to make sure that really in fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer contexts in which I find myself in, I would, so if it's become at least one lens that has become useful for me to probe into what are my motivations, how is my habitual decision making underneath consciousness in the subconscious, how does it actually do that, why do I choose this over this other approach. And the lens that I found really useful is imagining a little bit like prompt engineering for ChatGPT when you tell ChatGPT, you are a brilliant scientist with great knowledge of like this and this and this domain, and you recently have been given this medal of like so and so, and now answer this question, right? To put ChatGPT into the most success oriented state to really give you the answer that will be to your satisfaction, right? Other than saying, oh, you are a 6-year-old idiot, you've never heard of this topic, and now answer the question, right? That would be the opposite, right? Where you literally say, like, you don't know shit. And the lens that I'm using for myself is if I had to summarize me, Jochen, as a person in this context, who am I in this context? And I summarize this as a 5 sentence paragraph. And at work, it might be uh, Jochen is a compassionate, knowledgeable engineer who is mentoring some people, and there would be some sentences and then go, right? And then the situation comes, and given that description, I can act. And how important it is
Mm.
to add to that description, Jochen is comfortable not knowing the answers.
Mm.
And what a difference that makes, right? Because it literally means if someone comes with a question and I really have this experience, yeah, I'm not sure, I can just say, yeah, don't really know. But how, almost like with, if I don't add this to this inner description that I'm using as a kind of unconscious then template from which to decide, how sneaky it is to always sneak back in of like, no, no, but I'm supposed to know the answers.
Mm.
Where I really think we've done quite a number on humanity, especially in Western cultures with our education system, by literally hammering into people that they are supposed to always know the answer in pretty much every context there is, right? You go to the
Yeah.
bank, how are you going to pay for this? You must have an answer. Like whatever it is, you're supposed to have an answer to any question.
Yeah.
And how much it creates then this bias towards the mind. Because the mind is
Yep.
the tool that has the answers.
Yep. Even wrong answers, regardless of
Yeah,
the
boy,
quality,
yeah.
just produce an answer. The
The
pre
instructions
and
didn't.
yeah,
Yeah, the
and
instructions
punishing
didn't say
people
about they have to be correct.
exactly, and punishing people for not producing an answer on the spot without giving the chance to contemplate by giving them the permission to say, I don't know, let me think about it. Or I don't know, let's talk about it. Or I don't know, let's do some research on it. Yeah. What you said, it's so empowering. You create that empowerment for yourself to you give yourself permission to say, I don't know. It's so empowering. Absolutely. One thing I am very careful to tell my students at the college is you can ask me questions. If you do not feel comfortable, if you don't understand something, if you can't understand what I'm saying because my accent's too strong or the maths is too hard, you can put your hand up and ask me a question, and it's okay. And some of them are taking advantage of that, but the idea is, for some reason, people the mind again thinks itself in a box. There are things you can do, there are things you can't do, and it's easy to get locked in that box. But once you give people permission to do those things, then the box widens or the box door opens and people can roam freely. Yeah. It's very important to think about what you give yourself permission to do. Yeah, absolutely. It's another way of escaping the mind and opening yourself up to experience beyond the limits of the mind. Yeah.
And bringing this back to friendship. For me, good friends are the people where I feel that kind of atmosphere is part of the natural sense of the relationship, where the other person does not approach me with similar like a third fourth grade teacher in school. You must have the answer. But a friend approaches me with an attitude, what do you make of this?
Yeah.
But in a very open-ended and no wrong answers, but really kind of come from your bottom-up experience, come from the heart, and just tell me what is going on as I'm describing this thing.
Yeah.
And what a difference that makes if you have people like that in your life.
Well, look at the three crises I described in my life with my friendships. The first one, you are too much of something. You can't be doing that. The second one, I don't like your humor. You can't do that. You have to stop doing that. And the third one, why aren't you doing this thing? Why aren't you acknowledging the superiority of my model? Why aren't you doing this? Each of them is finding a boundary. Oh, I'm not fitting the model that they want me to fit, or I'm doing something that goes beyond the bounds of acceptability or in some way. Uh, and as you say, in the other approach is you are free to be with that person in that relationship and free to explore completely openly. Mm. Have we I think that's it for my notes. There's always more to discuss, but we can put it in comments on the Substack or whatever it is, or discuss them elsewhere. But I think we have traversed incredible ground, incredibly rich
I I
conversation.
might at least still want to say, Jeremy, just in our friendship, some really deep gratitude for how I got to experience you at the beginning. Um, when I started reading some of your posts and your comments, and then you invited me into the sense making crew, where one of your qualities that I find initially certainly had this experience of admiration was the commitment to encouragement, where I really feel coming from you, not just to me, but like other people as well, like pretty much everyone in the community, is a kind of, why don't you give that a try? And it is not as though that is a quality that I lack completely, but it is certainly a quality that speaks very much to my sensibilities about, oh yeah, yeah, it feels very good to be in the presence of a person who exudes that quality. Because again, it creates this invitation towards more exploration and growth. And there's a very strong suggestion of not not that I recall it ever being like explicit, but a very strong suggestion. Exploration comes with missteps, comes with stepping somewhere where you will find out soon enough that is probably not the direction where you want to regularly step in. Um, but that's okay. You do not have to worry about innocent missteps. But we'll take care of that somehow. Which is, I would say, different from someone who is also very curiosity driven and open, but where that element of genuine encouragement that creates an ease next to the curiosity and desire for exploration, right? Because, exploration itself doesn't have to be easeful, right? But that is certainly something that I always get coming from you is, this is a space when Jeremy is facilitating where I feel everyone is invited to step into a state, an embodied state of it's okay to not even to say the wrong thing. There are no wrong things to say. Just say it, and then we'll take care of whatever comes from that. And how wonderful that is.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize I was doing that, but it's certainly something I encourage because there's no learning, there's no growth without taking risk. We have to take risks with ourselves, with each other. The idea is that for it to be constructive, uh, you can't be killed by the risk you're taking, right? So it has to be with means. But look, if we're having a conversation, there's no need for anyone to get hurt. This is the space where we can grow together, and we have to be tolerant of other people pushing the boundaries a bit and learning for themselves and learning with us. as well. And that definitely is something I encourage with my students as well. On my side, thank you very much. I appreciate that. What I see in you, apart from this is the thing that stands out the most, apart from all your other qualities, is that you are a man on a journey of discovery. And when I saw that, very early on, I saw that, I thought, I want to see what's happening on this journey. I want to see where this man goes and what he comes up with and what he discovers. And so that's why I'm so pleased that you're at Emergent Commons and that you attend the sense making discussion and that I can read your Substack, because that's what Jochen has discovered, or that's where Jochen's mind has turned, and that's where he's out great. You've found let's say a beast to grapple with. And through that grappling, you discover something else, and then you can go on to the next adventure and the next adventure. And that's how I see you. So apart from all your other qualities, that's the one that stands out to me is, this guy's on a really interesting journey. And I want to see what he discovers on that journey. Yeah. And don't dismiss it. That's so rare
No,
because
no, no. Oh, Jeremy.
yeah, yeah, no,
Like
no, you're not dismissing it, but I'm saying,
this
this is
is
really
fu this is
because a
really
lot of
fun to
people,
hear.
yeah, a lot of people, and this isn't a problem with them, but they're in emergent commerce, etc. They're a bit older and they've been on that journey. They've discovered who they are to some extent. With you, you're continuing that journey, and it looks like you'll be continuing that journey for a long time. And that introduces a real element of, wow, this is really interesting. There's something interesting going on here. And I love it when you share your thoughts and ideas and what you've learned with the group. It's like, oh, okay. Because it's always unique. And so I really get a lot out of that. So yeah.
Um, Jeremy, have a wonderful Sunday afternoon now.
Afternoon now,
And
yeah.
until next time, hopefully in the sense making crew call.
Yeah. I think this is a wonderful project, Jochen. I'm so glad you're doing it. And I can't wait to see the other conversations that you've had as well. Thank you very
Until
much.
then, bye bye.
Yeah.